I have a story for you today. It's the story of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. We remember him during the time of the color green. Martin was born on January 15th, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia. His mother and father called him Michael after his father, but when he was 5, his father changed both their names to Martin Luther King to honor the great German reformer from the 16th century. That German reformer fought to make the world better, and Martin and his father did too. Martin had an older sister and a younger brother. His father gathered the family around the dinner table every night at 6 o'clock. And he led them in lively discussions about God and the world and people and the Bible. He thought it was important to talk about serious things with even his young children, because he wanted them to understand the world that they were growing up in. Martin's mother also talked to him about serious things. When Martin was only 6, his best friend, who was white, told him he wasn't allowed to play with somebody who had black skin. This really confused Martin. He became sad and angry and lonely, and his mother took him on her lap, and she told him about slavery in the South, in the United States, and about prejudice. Prejudice is when someone doesn't like you just because they don't like the color of your skin. And she reminded him that there were places in the Bible where the people of God overcame slavery and prejudice, and that with God's help, he could overcome it too. When Martin grew up, he became a Baptist minister, like his father and his grandfather. He also studied for many years and became a doctor of theology. And that is why we know him as Dr. King. He also worked hard for the dream that Black Americans would no longer be treated differently because of the color of their skin. No one knew how real change might begin until one day in 1955 in Montgomery, Alabama, a Black woman named Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on the bus that she was riding. In those days in the South, Black people had to live separate from all the white people. The white people on the bus could sit in the front, and the Black people had to sit in the back. And then in the middle, white and Black could sit there. But if a white person wanted your seat and you were in the middle, you had to get up and go to the back if you were Black. So one day the bus doors opened and a group of white people got on the bus. And the bus driver told Rosa Parks she had to move to the back. And she said, "Nope." She said, "I'm tired of unfair laws." She was arrested, and this made a lot of Black people angry. And they decided it was time that something be done about all of the unfair laws ruling their lives. They had to live separately. They had to go to separate schools. They had to sit in a separate room in a restaurant. They had to use separate bathrooms, separate churches, separate everything. They were not treated equally in any way. They didn't have good jobs like the white people. They didn't have enough money like the white people. It was time for change. And that is when Dr. King went to Montgomery and helped them to fight back. He said, "We will fight back peacefully. We will not hurt anyone. We will not carry sticks or guns. We will protest peacefully." And he told the people, "Stop using the buses until the law is changed." Now, because the Black people were poor, they often didn't own cars, and they needed the bus to take them to their jobs, to take them to church, to the grocery store, even to see a friend. But they decided to sacrifice and to work hard to change this law, so they stopped using the buses. They walked instead. For 381 days, they walked. That's over a year. And the bus companies finally said, we will go out of business. So they went to the city government and had the laws changed. Black people could sit anywhere they wanted to on the bus. This was just the first of many ways that Dr. King organized protests to help change America. He worked very hard. It took a lot of sacrifice. It took so much love and so much courage and so much faith for Dr. King to continue on. And his family suffered because of this also. Their house was almost bombed one time. Many people tried to scare them with their words and with knives and guns. Dr. King was arrested and placed in jail 29 times for trying to change things by protesting against unfair laws. In 1963, a huge crowd of people came to Washington, D.C. to march for jobs and for freedom. That's when Dr. King made his most famous speech. He said, "I have a dream that someday my 4 little children will live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." This was the year that Dr. King won the Nobel Peace Prize. He was only 34 years old. And the next year, the Civil Rights Act turned his dreams into law. And the next year, the Voting Rights Act was passed. But there was still so much more work to do. The laws were changing, but the hearts and minds of the American people needed to change also. And that was very hard. Dr. King continued to travel and he continued to work for change until one sad day in 1968, he was killed in Montgomery, Alabama. He was buried in Atlanta, Georgia, where he was born. We remember Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. because of his dream that Black Americans would be treated the same as everyone else. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Now, I wonder, what's your favorite part of this story? And I wonder, what do you think is the most important part of this story? I wonder, do you see yourself in this story in any part? Does it speak to you? And I wonder, can we take anything out of this story and still have our story?